Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the 5th module of Scientific Foundations of Stress. Today we are going to talk about stress in college life. For this session we are giving a separate chapter, separate discussion to stress in college life, because I feel that this is a very important time of our lives and this is a place of transition. So, if at this stage an individual cannot deal with things effectively, then these stresses may have a long term impact on an individual's life, basically be it on the physiological aspects or on the psychological aspects of life. So, today's session we will talk about the stresses in college life, what are the signals of stress that you have to understand, that you have to focus, keep in mind if you are a student or if you are a teacher, and the effects of stress and how to deal with it. How do different colleges across the world deal with the stressful levels of students? We will also discuss that a little in brief. To start off our discussion, I shall focus on a few case vignettes, things that I have seen as a psychologist in a college. And to take case 1, it is about a student named AC who comes around with a problem of low grades. Now, this is a very common issue with many students. Now, AC reports that he has low grades and that is why he does not feel like going to class. He was one of the toppers in his school, in his village, in his town, and in his state he was one of the rank holders. So, this is the first time in his life that he is not performing well. So, this is AC's problem is not a new one, and AC's problem is faced by many students who are in college and who are undergoing the pressures and the stresses of college life. So, how did AC respond to his low grades? So, he stopped going to the classes, and initially before his mid-sem exams he thought that, well, if I do not want to go right now, I would rather take some few days off, study in my room, in my hostel room, and that would help me to deal with things better. But as the days went by, the avoidance behavior of going to the classes increased, or I should say the anxiety increased, and with time he stopped going to classes, he did not take his mid-sems, and after that he also dreaded to go to classes before his end-sem exams, and finally he did not appear for the finals as well. He did not have the prerequisites to attend the exam, his attendance was low. Now, this is one case, as I have mentioned, is a very frequent thing we come across amongst college students all across the world. The second one is about BD. BD came from a different part of the country and he was not familiar with the language. Now, his regional language that he spoke, his mother tongue that he spoke, was different from many other people in his college. So, they spoke a different language, and he was also not well versed in English, in which the academics was being conducted. Now, BD was also undergoing stress because of a problem with his second language acquisition. Now, what did that result into? He stopped interacting with others. So, since he could not express his opinions, his ideas, his views in a second language, so he stopped interacting with people. He spent more time indoors in his room. and occasionally with one or two few friends who spoke his mother tongue. Now, this is also a very common feature with students traveling different lands to study. We often come across students who've gone to the West to study and are facing problems with the language, with the other food habits, the temperature, the climate, weather conditions, etc., and also the attitudes of people. Now, it's also something that we come across in India, where students from different states, when they come and study in other states, also face the same issue. Now, the resultant behavior in case of BD is also stress. So, he started avoiding people, he became withdrawn, and he spent more time indoors on his laptop, either on social networking or watching movies. So, this is or playing games. This is again another stressor for a student during the college years. The third case we are going to talk about is EG, who is a senior student, and he was married and he was doing his research, where he complained about not being able to balance his academics and his family. This is also another problem that college students go through, as this is the time for transition, and many of the senior students have to take responsibility of families. So, either they are married or they have family responsibilities at home that needs to be addressed. It becomes a problem for them to cope with the pressures of academics, the daily pressures, as well as the family pressures. Now, in the case of EG's wife and child also lived on campus, also lived nearby, but he had to divide his time between his academics, his lab work, which many times continued for hours at end, and again spend time with his family, with his wife and child. Now, this was a cause of stress because he couldn't distribute his time over the two equally, and he actually didn't know what to do. Now, these are some of the things that we generally come across in most of the students. So, I have just given you 3 examples, real time examples, that I have come across as a psychologist, and we will discuss that what are the other things that a college student goes through. Clearly, case 1 and case 3 are 2 different people having different problems, but in case 2 as well, but the age difference between case 1, 2 and case 3 are a lot, but it shows us that what are the different varied kinds of problems that college students have to clearly go through and deal with. Now, that brings us to the developmental tasks during college years. College expects us to be emotionally independent from the family. This is a transitional time where a student is moving from home to an independent setting. If it's a residential setting, all the more independent, doing things by himself, dealing with things, taking decisions for himself, and again is also has to take care of his emotional distortions as well as emotional distress by himself, or relate to his other friends and not run back to his family. This is a problem that we come across in India more so, because till 18 years of life we often see students, or maybe a little later too, staying with their parents, and where parents play a huge responsibility in taking decisions for them. Now, so college years expect you to be emotionally independent and choose and prepare for a career. So, a student comes to college looking forward to a career either in academics or in a job setting, and this decision making very frequently becomes a huge task by itself. Many students who are good in academics are expected to stay in academics for their career options. But many times the selection of a career is a confusion, because the student may want to do something else that is in no way related to what his parents want him to do, or what the others, his teachers, others expect him to do. And that is why this independent decision of taking responsibility and selecting a career and dealing with the stresses of that career option also become an important developmental task. Preparing for emotional commitment and family life is another new step that comes at this phase of life. So, the student has moved from the adolescent years to adulthood, and during this young adulthood period, they have to take decisions for moving into the next phase of family life. So, taking responsibility for another individual and building up a family is a huge developmental task. And of course, building an ethical system of his own. So far there were the ethics were as per the family, as per the school system that the student followed. But during this phase of life, the student selects, the college student selects his has deterministic ideas about his ethical values in life, things that he prefers, he wants to follow, and that may be very different from what his family has expected him to do. Above all, the college years has the primary a focus of college life is academics, and this, so imagine a student has to carry on with all these developmental tasks along with maintaining an equal focus on academics. Now, academics by itself can be a stressor. So, to perform in academics and be consistent in performing well in academics is by itself a huge stressor for the student. So, managing these transitional changes requires the college students to develop new roles and modify the old ones. As I was talking about the ethical system, also building an emotional independence from the family, taking autonomy and taking responsibility for one's actions. So, all these factors together can build up a lot of stress within the individual. So, some of the chronic stressors during college life, what I have done is I have divided into two parts, as in what are the primary stressors faced by students, the younger students, that is the freshers and the first second years and third years, and then we go into the stressors faced by the senior students. So, students who are completing their academics or they are completing their research areas. So, this group, the age group is distinctly different from so the younger student or the fresher has just left home and joined college. So, it requires a lot of adjustment issues, as I was talking about the first case today. He has and also the second one, they have come from different places and they have to adjust to a new college setting, and with their new food habits build up new habits of staying alone in a hostel room, and also with the climatic conditions and the people around them. So, imagine somebody who was brought up in Chennai has suddenly to go and live somewhere in Delhi for the first time, or say somebody who has spent his childhood years, his school years in Dehradun has to come and stay in Kharagpur. So, the weather conditions are very different, the language people speak are very different, and also the way the food habits, the way the customs are carried out are entirely different. So, think about a senior student. In this stress may also happen to somebody who is traveling across the world, maybe to a different country, say to study for his postdoc or say for his PhD. So, there also the adjustment stage is causes a lot of stress, because that is the time when you have to really adopt yourself and adapt yourself to the surroundings. Now, grades and performance, when the fresher joins the college, so getting accustomed to these things and also maintaining grades and performance is very important. So, think about a student who has been very good in his academic life during his school years, has ranked and on national levels, and then has come to college, a well reputed college, and thereafter his grades are not as good as it was during the school years. That by itself would be a stressor. So, but the problem is that when you are going up to college, the school was a small setting where you were presented with accolades and appreciated by teachers and parents and everybody around you. But in college there are many more like you, and the student starts feeling like a small fish in a large ocean. So, it's this exposure, this first exposure to a new world is always stressful. So, it's imagine how much of extra stress and additional stress that the student is going through when he has just come to college. So, adjusting to the environment and adjusting to this rebuilding your own self concept that, well, I am good, but there are others who are like me or maybe better. So, this adjustment, the person who can do this adjustment well will actually resort to more adaptive behavioral patterns. A person who does not will actually again start missing out classes or not adapt to his surroundings, and that may affect his physiology as well. So, communication skills. So, I was talking about developing communication skills. One of the problems in the school setting is we do not encourage too much of interactions. If it's a good student who is studying for a longer time and is not interacting with people much, that is not seen as a demerit, or that is not seen as a limitation. But with time we see that communication skills is becomes a very important factor for adjustment during college years. So, how I understand people, how I effectively present myself during social interactions is one of the major stressors to a student during his college years. And as a psychologist, I often come across a lot of students who have more stress because of their communication skills. This, if it's not dealt with properly during the fresher years, it becomes a problem later on when people go for placement. And more so, as I was saying earlier, that many students carry this idea that, well, I am not good enough, and it lowers their self-esteem. And even in the latter part of life, unless there are really good positive events, they carry this idea of low self-esteem, that I cannot speak in public, or I cannot carry on with a good conversation. Now, this could be easily dealt with during the preliminary years. Now, another major stressor during the first and second year of college is getting involved in college activities. So, imagine a student who has come from a school setting where he's studied a lot, he's worked hard, and now entered a college setting with a lot of activities to join. So, it's a huge new world in front of him. So, think about a student like this who gets involved in several activities. Now, balancing academics, and mind you, in a residential college setting like ours, we see students have a problem with balancing their social activities as well as academics. So, we often come across students getting into too many social activities in our too many clubs and societies, but later on not being able to fulfill the requirements of all, and there it is affecting their academics. So, as I was mentioning right now, balancing academics and social involvements often become a problem. So, of course, we do see a lot of students later on, once they after 2-3 years of stay in college, they reduce the number of activities to a selected few of their interests, but many times the damage has already been done, and it affects their personality. Also, the stress affects their physiological well-being and subjective well-being. For the senior student, and here I am talking of students who are just passing out of college, or think about students who are say from UG or PG level, and students who are finishing with their research and doctoral degrees in college. For them, it is the career decisions take a priority in their life. So, there whether whether this is a good career decision, whether I am taking the right step moving towards academics, and sometimes the future is pretty unknown to them. So, what do I do, where do I go? These questions are their minds are filled up with such questions. Relationship issues, by now they have to move into the next phase of life of getting settled, and relationship issues also take an important part. And if there are breakups, or even plans for settling down, these things often cause more stress in the individual. Family responsibilities also increase, and if a student is married, then, as I have mentioned earlier, balancing, as we saw in EG's case, the third case that I was talking of, balancing the family life and academics becomes a huge problem. So, and another question that I am often faced with by students is, why am I doing this, or what am I doing? So, why am I running for, especially during the placement season, or almost at the end of their career in the college? I often come across this question by students where they say that whether I am, it's not about whether I am taking this is a good job or that's a good job. It's more about whether why am I doing this, whether this is the thing for me. So, sometimes there is a sense of existential crisis where the student tries to look for meaning in life. So, it goes beyond the financial aspects, the power aspect, the future prospects. It is more about identifying, and it's more of philosophizing who I am and where I am and what exactly do I want to do. So, these questions become very important to the student at this phase of life. So, we have seen that the senior student as well as the junior student, the younger one who has just joined college, have their different kinds of stresses. And so, imagine, as I was mentioning, that it's a whole lot of things that the student has to go through, and above all, in academics there is always the pressure of time, and there is the pressure to perform. So, no matter what additional problems you have, these are in addition to it, or the prima facie, you have to see that your submissions are on time, that your presentations are on time, that you've performed well in the exam and you've been there on time. So, these are huge stresses for the student. Now, talking about the stress signals, if you are a student and if you are facing these things in your life, so be it that you are from an engineering school, or you are a med school, or from any other college, and if you have any of these stress signals, then please wait, pause and think about it. What is actually causing these factors? Now, several times these come to us as cognitive problems. Of course, the student does not come and tell us that, ma'am, I have difficulty concentrating and I am having clinical depression. It's not like that. They will present as, I cannot remember things, I cannot concentrate, I have problems in attending to things, I don't have interest in anything, I have trouble completing my assignments on time, I am not going to class, I feel snappy and irritated very often. So, anybody tells me anything, I get easily angry, and somehow my just the lid goes off and I feel like just bashing that person. And students often complain of tension headaches, tightness in muscles, and they will not tell you tension headaches, they will just say that there is this headache and there is this overall pain, and there is a loss of appetite, and I often come across students surviving on chips and snacks, and there is a severe change in sleeping habits. So, these things are very frequently seen among students. And another very important thing that I come across is excessive fatigue and loss of interest. I don't feel like doing anything, I don't feel like I don't have the energy for anything, I feel very exhausted, and it just seems that the day is not carrying on at all. Now, these are some of the signals that you need to watch out for if you are a student, or if you are the guardian of a student, and you should stop and check out how many of these symptoms you have, and whether these signals have been carrying on for a longer time. Now, what are the effects? We have spoken about sleep disturbance, and definitely we come across many students in college who sleep very late and they get up very late. Very often they will tell you that I got up at 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. because I slept at 4. Now, the question is that because you slept at 4, you got up at 11, or rather I should say that is the way they think, but otherwise actually it is because you got up at 11 that you slept at 4. So, these things they need to, there is this delayed sleep problem that very often happens to college students. So, this is the first signal that things are not in order. Avoidance behavior, as I was speaking of, anxiety avoidance behavior very often leads to absenteeism. We were talking about the first case where the fear of facing a teacher or fear of facing the class very often leads to absenteeism and poor academic performance. So, stress may show its impact on academics, on health. So, like we have already spoken about headaches and irritable bowel syndrome, clinical depression, and anxiety disorders, and several times may also lead to suicide when the student feels that I cannot deal with things anymore, there is no hope for me. Now, the other effects could be something of when there is isolation, when there is withdrawing from social interactions, then moving into other aspects to keep that individual engaged and remove all the other anxieties from his head, from his mind. So, we often come across the student having college student having internet addiction, games addiction, and also taking resort to in alcoholism and other substance use. Now, several times we see that even peer pressure may start alcoholism and substance use, but later on that becomes a way of dealing with stress. So, this we must look out for these things. So, be it the behavioral symptoms or be it the physical signs, if you are a student or if you are a guardian of a student. Now, in several college settings, to deal with stress, there are many programs on stress management and resilience building that are being carried out. In the previous session, I spoke about, in module 4, I spoke about resilience, and there I just spoke about hardiness, and I think it is very important to work on resilience building. For resilience actually means bouncing back from stress. We come across individuals who will deal with stress effectively and come back no matter what the situation is, while there are others who in a stressful situation give in. We have studied about the personality variables, but it is also very important to work on resilience. So, you could look up the resilience studies. I am just mentioning this, a few studies that are carried on across the world. So, the resilience, this is a picture from the Resilience Consortium. This is the web page, home page of the Resilience Consortium, that is carried out by several US universities, and they all have their programs. And in this website you will see, you will come across several strategies to deal with stress and also build your resilience. Okay. So, in Stanford, that is a wonderful thing that they carry out, where you know, they talk about how what was your worst grade. So, there will be there are teachers putting up their worst grades. So, that just reminds you that it is you are not the only one who's had a bad time. You know, people have had bad times, bad patches in their lives, but they've just grown out of it and come out of it and succeeded. So, you can check out this website on the Resilience Consortium. This is another one from the Australian government, and they work on student resilience and well-being. This is also a very interesting site, and you will get a lot of information on building up your resilience, dealing with stress. And regarding resilience college studies in India, we are in IIT Kharagpur, we have a project on resilience building, and currently we are working on designing modules to work to deal effectively with stress and build up your resilience and bouncing back from adversities. So, very soon we hope that this will be available for use, and definitely you can take a look at that. So, finally, to summarize today's session, we have spoken about the stresses in college life, about the signals of stress and how stress affects the individuals, and we have spoken about resilience studies. I hope you will take a look at this, and this module of scientific foundations of stress was interesting to you, and even the assignments will be so. Thank you.